So, hello everyone. So this talk is going to be about XML external entity attacks. Hope most of you would have knew about this attack. So let us get a poll about this. So how many of you know about this attack already? Okay, I see some hands. Right. Yeah. So before dive into the topic, as usual, a cheap slide about the speaker. Uh, yes, I'm Sangi Rajesh. I work for Zoa Corporation as a red teamer, a security engineer, and I do some stuff. And I'm also an active CDF participant. I don't write blogs too much, but you can see my write-ups over here at Medium at SANGIIII. It's 4 I's. So yeah, let's start with the boring history as usual. So most of you have worked with XML, right? Really, guys? Right. So XML is as I said, it's 23-year-old. We all know it's a simple text-based markup language, which is used for the things we do between the computers, to transfer the data. The data should be in a structured format, so that both of the parties can understand what exactly is being sent for the network. So this is a sample structure of a XML. So you have a parent node and multiple child nodes. So this represents a node. Node is the root node, and there are 4 child nodes, that is 2 from heading content. So the other party will just parse these nodes and interpret what message have been transferred from the server. And then 2 things we need to know more about the XXE attack, and that is DDT and entities. So first we can look about this DDT. So DDT is the document type definition. So this thing represents how a XML should look like. For example, let us consider 2 parties are there in a network. Party A sends a XML to party B. So the party B should validate, the structure of the XML. That may be malformed, or maybe, the content may be broken. There are a lot of possibilities. So party A can decide what all these values can be. This is similar to the data types. So as you can see here, if this is not clear to the back, where you people can come friend. So we have a lot of example slides over here, right? So the first name node should be let's start with this element. So this element will have an employee that's going to be the root node. That is, we have mentioned on the top element. So that will be having 3 nodes, 3 child nodes: first name, last name, and email. And the first name is going to be PC data, which is nothing but parsed character data. So this is going to be the representation. This just to verify between the parties. And yeah, so you can also declare the DDT out of the XML, or we call it as external DDT. So there are 2 types: internal DDT as well as external DDT. So this external DDT will hold the thing we have seen before. So this thing. So this thing will be on the external.ddt, so that you can include it. This is similar to I hope you have used PHP inclusion or something. Include that file, so that will include all the references to this file. So it's similar to that. And then, yes, entities. So entities are similar to variable declarations. So entities are similar to, yes, you can define a global variable and you can use the variable anywhere on your code. This is similar to that. Like, we have a entity here. So this is the syntax. So SJ as Sangi. So whenever this XML just parses it, this is an example for internal entity, and this one is for external entity. So we have this entity thing here, and that is Sangi. So whenever this XML get passed by somebody, and it's going to reach this point. This is a syntax for referencing a entity that is already declared or on the top. So that is SJ is mentioned as Sangi. So whenever if you try to look about who is the speaker, that's going to be Sangi. And this is the syntax for external entities, similar to DTTs. You can also make all these things into a external file, and you can reference it like this. And yeah, so let's talk about the attack. Well, as I mentioned before, you can reference a external file as a entity. What you can do is you can just try to read all the local files on the server. If is that clear? This one, guys. Oops. Sure. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. Yes. Right. So you can reference any local file. This is one traditional payload we use to identify all the local file inclusions, file etc password. So whenever you include this as an entity, what this SJ will refer is to the contents of the etc password file. So what will happen is whenever the other party parses, whoever parses the XML, they will just try to include the entity as this password file. And if they respond out who is the speaker, that is going to be the content of the password. So these are all the protocols supported by the entity, and basically it depends upon the platform that is passing the XML. If you consider these are all the file types supported by Java. There are these are all the the protocols as specified in the URL spec. File protocol, HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, and Gopher is almost dead. It's not even there. Well, yeah. So that's how you include your external entities and can refer any local files. This is one example that I've reported on Squarespace a long back. Squarespace had this this feature of importing the WordPress content. Whenever you export the WordPress, the whole blog, it will export it as a XML file. So obviously, the other party have to parse it as an XML. So Squarespace missed out to exclude the document type and the entities. So this is the title of this was given as the title of the blog. So when it parses it, it just thrown out the information about the server. And another flavor of this XXE is billion loves. So billion loves is nothing but you keep on declaring variables, a recursion of variables that can take up the server's whole memory. So as you can see here, I have as I mentioned before, lol is a kind of parameter. Variable. So that lol is referenced by the lol one, and the whole lol one is again referenced by multiple lol twos. So this is getting exponentially declared, and the server memory will just go down. Yeah. So it's all about parsing, 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 parsing. So whoever parsing the XML files, you know, XML has the structure. It is the same structure. It was, it was defined by the specification. So you have to do it in the same way, everyone. So these are all the common parsers, used by the developers out there. Well, simple XML DOM, XML reader, DOM, SAGs, anything you use, they just read the doc type or entity. It's their job. You have to do it. So what you have to do is you have to, clearly, explicitly mention that you shouldn't read the entities. As we have mentioned before, you're including the entities from an external file or somewhere. The parser shouldn't consider that. So that's the thing. Well, let's discuss about so the possible ways you can find out the entity things. This may be useful for the bug bounty hunters out here, and you can simply look for this the applications that that takes XML as input, maybe from body or parameter or somewhere else. As I mentioned before, the Squarespace thing was expecting an XML. Obviously the WordPress content is going to be XML, so it was expecting an XML file. So at those places you can try all the things. And this interesting feature called Microsoft Office Document Uploads, hope you have experienced about these things, experienced all these files, XLSX or DOCX or common things. These files are, compressed XML files. The data inside the document are, they have the data hold on an XML format. So if you unpack this, maybe you can unzip a docx or XLSX file with 7-zip or your favorite archiver. You can see the things called content1.xml, seat1.xml. So all these data are in XML format inside a document. So whoever parsing this document, say for example, you might have seen this, resume parsing XXE on Facebook. There was reported 3 years back, I guess so. So the party obviously going to, when they need the data, they need to unpack the document. The data is obviously inside the XML. So during the unpacking, we're done, right? We already, have sent the payload. So what you have to do is you have to embed all your doc type and entity, magic inside the document. So whenever the other party passes it, that's it. And one more thing is Microsoft Project Exchange. This format is, some rarely used format, which is MPX, MPPX, I guess so. So this is again a compressed XML format. And this one, SAML. SAML, yeah, as we all know, SAML is an XML format. So obviously, it's going to be the same. And this one is quite interesting. Some of you have, may have, noticed, or this is going to be some new thing. Do you believe an image can also lead to a XXE attack? Because it's not an XML file, right? Right. I know you know it. Right. So it is because, the images like JPEG or GIF or any formats can have their own, metadata information. We call it XMP, which is the format defined by Adobe Systems. So an image can also include the XML files within it. So whenever again, if you're sending this image to a thumbnail generating service or maybe any image processing service, if it tries to read the metadata, again, that's going to be the XML. If you don't handle it well, again, you're prone to XXE again. Right, so how do you find this XXE vulnerability? So you can simply grab your code. This thing works, believe me. This thing really works. So what you have to do is, you may use Java, PHP, Ruby, Python, whatever it is, the parsing logic is going to be same. There are some common libraries out there. They're going to parse your XML. So if you can handle them carefully, you can just get rid of it, right? So I'll just show you some examples. So this is an example for Java. So we have used document builder factory. So this is a common way to parse a XML file. So what we have done here is, we have just created a new instance and a document builder, and the builder directly parses the socket input stream, which means, whatever string you send on the socket or the socket, that's going to be parsed by the document builder, right? So yeah, that's obviously going to execute the payload that you've given over the network. So you can avoid this by explicitly invoking this property, explicitly configuring this property. The factory has, you can set feature like, this property, Apache disallow document type declaration. So whenever you explicitly configure this property, the parser obviously not going to read all your document type declarations, your entities and DTTs. Those won't be considered. So the references will be just read as a usual text, not the references. Yeah, this one is for PHP. So PHP, the one common library that is used is simple XML. So basically, simple XML import DOM, and DOM is obviously your XML string. So this has a one-line fix as usual. You can simply disable your entity loader, that is libxml disable entity loader to false, so that PHP simple XML parser won't consider your doc type declarations. And again, with this interesting Node.js thing, for Node.js, there are quite common parsers out there, including this Node expat and Sax. Well, Node expat, we have seen about this billion of things, right? But Node expat, no, this expat doesn't have any fix for this billion of things. So if you are now going behind this Node expat, get rid of it. If you want to, avoid the billion of attack, simply move to Sax parser. That's the only fix available for Node.js. And for speaking about Java, the recent versions of Java are pre-configured with the expansion limit, so that the billion love attack won't work. The expansion limit is 65,000, I guess. I guess that's fair enough for the server to hold up 65,000 entities. That's not going to take huge memory for that. So we have a catch here. So 100 points to Java. Right. There is again this question on the community, whether this XXE to RCE is possible. You have an answer for this? Yes. Anyone? Who's that? How? Yes, how? What was written on the blog? What was the method used to escalate XXE to RCE?
He actually was like doing XXE with PDF.
Mm-hmm.
Then using that in that payload, he was inserting the payload in the subdomain of the he was using that payload HTTP called double slash some web collaborator. Then what it is, he just added the payload as a subdomain of the collaborator.
Right. Exactly.
Then after that, the payload executed and he got the.
So he just got the the request to that web collaborator, right? Is that a RCE or SSR?
Just as
Right.
after that, he had some payload
Exactly. So anyone have any other points regarding this? Any clues? Hello? No? Right. So XXE to direct RCE is not so possible unless the application explicitly get your node element and directly passing it to some cell execution code. No parser does that. So what a parser does is it just it's like a baby. It tells what you do. It just invokes the URL that is on the Excel entity. So as we mentioned before, it may be a file protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. So obviously, the parser can make a internal request. Let us consider, we have 4 servers within the perimeter, and only 2 of the servers are, exposed through the firewall, and only ADN 443 are open through the firewall. And consider the other 2 services, maybe the popular Elasticsearch or maybe any unauthenticated services within the perimeter, but you can't access them with through the firewall because they're not exposed to the firewall. So what you can do is you can simply get the URL of this. You can better try to port scan all the things. The XXE will give you the result of what it requested for the entity. So it may be the URL of the Elasticsearch or maybe any unauthenticated services. If you consider this AWS or Google Cloud, they have this internal URLs for all the configuration and management. Well, for AWS, they have this URL called metadata. So that will give you the information about the node. So that information is not available through the firewall, but you can still access it by giving a local IP and then a metadata. So that will give you all the local information. So this is what you can do. So when it escalates to a RCE, it depends upon which applications you're invoking. So the Elasticsearch may be vulnerable to a remote code execution. Then only you can escalate that SSRF into an RCE. So XXE to direct RCE, the XML payload can invoke a command execution is now possible. And yes, we can look a small demo about it. Well, as you can see here, this process.php, let me see if it's running. Right. So this process.php is like a registration form or something. So it obviously accepts the XML input. So what it does is, it just check with this, it just parses all these XML string and, and throws out SAS is already registered. So it may be this SAS or this SAS. Okay, there's confusion right here. Okay. So, what it does is it parses the XML and looking for this email node, and it tells you that this user is already registered. So whenever it points to that SAS, you can refer to an external entity. So it may be any local file. I have a demo here. Right. So, as you can see here, we have declared an entity here. So that is XXE, and that is pointing to the password file of the machine, of the server. It may be on the server. So this is the email user we have seen before. So you can just make the reference to XXE, right? Okay. So what we have here, the password file. So the server, sorry, this particular user, which means the whole content, is already registered. So this is how it works. Any questions on this? Okay. So we have one more possibility, this particular application prints out what it read. it prints out SAS is already registered. What if, it just give a generic information like the email you have entered is already registered. So what will you do on that point? Sorry? Yeah. But still, you can read the internal files. I'll tell you how. So we have another application here. So this is one of the vulnerability that was spotted in Play framework. So what the framework does is, it just passes, it accepts both, parameterized input as well as XML input. You can also pass it like this, but you have to, explicitly mention that the content type coming to the server is text/XML. So this thing already passing the XML. So what you have to do is, you want to make sure you can read the local files also. So what I can do is, oops. Yeah, this is one example. Like, I can point to some external DTT. So what a DTT can have is, right. This is inside the DTT. So what I'm doing here is, I'm just referring the EDC password file to entity P1, and again, a P2 entity that holds another entity declaration within the entity, right? So what it does is, it points to, again, it calls to some external URL along with the P1 as a parameter. So what it does, it just reads the file and